I have been gardening for over 25 years. I have made money in this yard. I have saved money in this yard. And I want to be straight with you right now. I have also made some mistakes in this yard that cost me real time, real money, and real aggravation that I would give anything to take back. And today, I am going to show you every single one of them. Not because I like embarrassing myself. I am doing this because nobody at your local garden center is ever going to sit you down and say, "Listen, do not plant that." They are not going to do it. You know why? Because they profit when you make mistakes. Every time a plant runs wild and you need to hire someone to rip it out, every time a vine tears apart your fence and you have got to replace siding, every time a ground cover kills your native plants and you go back to buy something new, they win. You lose. That is the arrangement. And I am done pretending otherwise. So here is the deal. Before we get into this list, I need you to do one thing. Drop your US state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. Just type it in. I read every single one, and it helps me make sure the content I put out every week actually applies where you live. Do it now while you are thinking about it. And I want you to stay with me through this entire video because somewhere around number 6, I am going to talk about a plant that is sold at almost every garden center in America as a beautiful, fragrant, low-maintenance ground cover. And it has absolutely devastated yards from Virginia to the Pacific Northwest. And I'm going to reveal to you how to actually kill invasive perennials without spending a fortune. You are going to want to hear that one. Let's go. Mint. Menthus sp. Let me tell you something about mint. When I planted it 20 years ago, I thought I was being clever. Fresh mint for iced tea, mint for cooking, mint to keep bugs away. It smelled incredible. It looked tidy in that first season. I was proud of myself. I remember standing there looking at that little patch of mint, thinking, this is exactly the kind of plant a smart gardener grows. I was wrong in a way that took me 4 years of physical labor to understand. Here is what the tag at the garden center does not tell you. Mint does not just spread, it colonizes. It uses 2 separate systems simultaneously. Above ground, it sends out lateral runners that root at every single point they touch the soil. But the real damage is underground, where it is driving a network of horizontal rhizomes in every direction you cannot see. Those rhizomes are aggressive. They are fast. And here is the part that will make you sit up straight. If you pull the top growth and leave even a fragment of rhizome the size of your thumbnail in the soil, it will grow into an entirely new plant. Every time you pull mint, you are potentially spreading mint. Every broken piece is a new colony. I want you to understand what this looked like in my yard by year 3. What started as a 12-in pot had consumed a 4 feet-wide section of a raised bed, crossed into the lawn, moved under my garden border edging, and was coming up on the other side. I spent 2 full weekends removing it, and I still had mint coming up in that bed 2 seasons later from root fragments I had missed. The safest cultivars to grow if you genuinely want mint are spearmint, Mentha spicata, or peppermint, Mentha ex piperita. But they must be planted in a container with drainage holes and kept completely off the soil. Sit the pot on a hard surface like concrete or pavers. Never let the runners touch bare earth. Never. Not even once. These plants are rated for USDA zones 3 through 11, which means they will survive almost anywhere in America, and they will spread almost anywhere in America. If you want the mint flavor in a garden bed, plant lemon balm instead, Quedlinburger niederliegende, or simple Melissa officinalis. It self-seeds a little, but you can pull seedlings easily without triggering an underground war. Morning Glory, Ipomoea purpurea. Here is a plant that looks like pure joy in June. The flowers are stunning. Violet, blue, white, magenta, and they open fresh every single morning. I planted Morning Glory for 3 straight years, thinking it was just a cheerful annual vine. What I did not understand is that it is a cheerful annual vine that is actively trying to take permanent control of your garden. Morning Glory is a prolific self-seeder at a scale that is almost hard to believe. One mature plant can drop hundreds of seeds per season. Those seeds can lie dormant in your soil for years. And I mean years, not just one season. I have read documented cases of Morning Glory seeds germinating after sitting in the ground for over a decade. You think you cleared it out. Spring comes. There it is, again and again and again. You are not fighting a plant. You are fighting a seed bank that you buried yourself. Beyond the seeding, Morning Glory roots at every node, meaning every point on its stem that touches the soil becomes an anchor point. It climbs fast, it smothers slower plants, and it has a climbing strategy aggressive enough to pull smaller shrubs down under its weight by midsummer. The variety most commonly sold and most invasive is Ipomoea purpurea, which is the common purple Morning Glory, along with Ipomoea nil, the Japanese Morning Glory. These are the ones to avoid. They are hardy as self-seeders in zones 2 through 11 and will re-establish themselves from seed year after year in almost any climate. Now, I want to be fair. Not all Morning Glories are created equal. If you love the look, grow Heavenly Blue in a controlled container with a trellis that sits in a pot, and deadhead every single flower before it sets seed. Every single one. Because the moment you miss a few and seeds drop into your garden bed, you have started the clock on a multi-year removal project. The safe alternative for a fast-growing, beautiful annual vine is black-eyed Susan vine, Thunbergia alata. It climbs, it blooms, it does not take over. That is the trade. Sunchokes, Jerusalem artichokes, Helianthus tuberosus. Stop right here. If you have been thinking about growing sunchokes because you read that they are easy, productive, and great for pollinators, I am asking you to hold that thought. All of that is true. They are also one of the hardest plants I have ever tried to remove from a yard. And I want you to hear my experience before you make the same mistake I did. Sunchokes produce edible tubers, and they are enthusiastic producers. In a good season, you can harvest a substantial amount of food from a single planting. The problem is the harvest. Every single tuber, every last one, has to come out of the ground, and that is nearly impossible to guarantee. The tubers spread underground in every direction. They go deep. They break apart during harvest, and any fragment you miss, any piece the size of a marble or smaller that stays in the soil over winter, will sprout the following spring. By year 2, a single planting turns into a dense underground mat. By year 3, you have a biological fortress. The plants themselves grow 8 to 10 ft tall in a good season, which means they are casting enough shade to suppress everything around them. I planted mine along a fence line, thinking it would be a productive living screen. Within 2 growing seasons, it had spread 4 feet in both directions beyond the original planting and was shading out an adjacent vegetable bed that I had been building for years. Getting rid of sunchokes is an endurance sport. You have to dig the entire area, sift the soil by hand, remove every tuber fragment, and then patrol for new shoots for 2 to 3 seasons afterward. In USDA zones 3 through 9, they are essentially perennial. Cold winters do not kill them. They just trigger dormancy, and they come right back in spring. If you genuinely want to grow them, do it in a dedicated raised bed with solid bottom barriers and a commitment to aggressive annual harvest. Otherwise, grow Hopi red dye sunflowers, Helianthus annuus, for the pollinator value and the aesthetic without the underground invasion. I want to stop for a second and ask you an honest advice, because nobody at your local garden center took the time to sit you down and tell you that morning glory seeds can lie dormant in your soil for a decade. Nobody stocking the shelves at a big box store walked over to you while you were standing in front of the sunchokes and said, "You know what? Let me tell you what year 3 looks like before you put that in your cart." They did not do that. They never will, because those stores profit from your enthusiasm. They profit from your next purchase. They do not profit from your long-term success. That is exactly what this channel is built to do differently. And if you are not subscribed yet, I need you to hit that button right now. I mean, right now, not when this video ends. YouTube's algorithm only consistently delivers content from channels it knows you follow. If you watch this video and keep scrolling without subscribing, there is a real chance you miss the next one. And I put content out every single week that is built specifically for gardeners who have been burned too many times by bad advice. Hit subscribe. It is free. It takes 2 seconds. Do it now, and let's keep going. Chinese wisteria, Wisteria sinensis. Let me tell you about the most beautiful nightmare I ever planted on my property. Chinese wisteria in bloom is one of the most stunning sights in the plant world. Cascading purple flower clusters, intoxicating fragrance, and an architectural presence that makes your whole yard look like a magazine spread. I understood completely why I planted it. I would make the same decision again in a heartbeat based on how it looked on the tag. What the tag did not tell me is what was coming. Chinese wisteria, Wisteria sinensis, is a structural predator. Those woody vines grow to 60 feet in length at maturity. 64 feet. They do not wind loosely around a support structure. They constrict. They wrap themselves around tree trunks, fence posts, and the structural members of pergolas with an increasing grip that gets tighter as the vine thickens over the years. I have seen wisteria vines large enough in diameter that they girdled and killed mature hardwood trees on properties where they had been left unchecked for a decade. The weight of a mature wisteria vine is enormous, and pergolas and trellises that were not engineered to support that weight will eventually fail under it. Beyond the structural damage, Chinese wisteria escapes cultivation persistently. It seeds into adjacent woodlands and takes over the understory. Ecologically, it is listed as invasive in 34 U.S. states. You are not just damaging your yard when you plant this. You are potentially contributing to the collapse of native plant communities in the woods next to your neighborhood. Removal is brutal. The established root system on a mature Chinese wisteria is massive. Professional removal can cost anywhere from $500 to over $2,000, depending on how established it is. And even after removal, you will be managing root sprouts for years. I want to be straight with you. If you love the wisteria look, grow the American native wisteria, Wisteria frutescens. The cultivar Amethyst Falls is the one I recommend. It is a well-behaved, non-invasive alternative that blooms beautifully, stays manageable, and will not eat your yard alive. It is hardy in USDA zones 5 through 9. That is the plant you want. Trumpet vine, Campsis radicans. There is a nickname in the gardening world for trumpet vine. Serious gardeners, the ones who have dealt with it long enough, call it hell vine. I am not going to mince words about why. When it first shows up in your yard, trumpet vine is gorgeous. Bright orange and red trumpet-shaped flowers all summer long. Incredible hummingbird traffic. Fast coverage on an ugly fence or wall. The first year, it is everything you hoped for. I planted it on a section of cedar fence, and thought I had solved two problems at once. I had privacy, and I had a hummingbird magnet. That was year 1. By year 3, the vine's adventitious roots, those are the small root structures it uses to grip surfaces, had penetrated the cedar siding on my fence posts. They do not just cling, they actively bore into surfaces. Brick, stucco, painted wood, siding, mortar joints, trumpet vine will find the microscopic gaps and work its way in. Removing it from a painted surface typically takes the paint with it. Removing it from brick or stucco can pull out chunks of the surface material itself. The repair costs on those surfaces can run into the hundreds of dollars before you have even dealt with the root system. And then there is the root system. Trumpet vine, Campsis radicans, spreads through deep underground runners that can travel 10, 15, even 20 ft from the original planting site before sending up new vines. You will have trumpet vine coming up in the middle of your lawn, in your flower beds on the opposite side of the yard, potentially in your neighbor's yard. It is extremely difficult to kill because the root system goes deep and persists even after the top growth is cut back repeatedly. If you are in USDA zones 4 through 9, you can absolutely grow a trumpet-shaped flower for hummingbirds. Just grow coral honeysuckle instead. Lonicera sempervirens. Specifically, the cultivar Major Wheeler is native to the eastern United States, blooms beautifully, feeds hummingbirds all season, and does not tear your house apart. That is the trade. Make it. Chameleon plant, fish mint, Hutuinia cordata. This is the one I warned you about in the introduction. The one sold at garden centers across America as a beautiful, low-maintenance ground cover. And I want to be very specific about this plant so you know exactly what to look for and avoid. Hutuinia cordata, commonly sold as the chameleon plant or fish mint, is marketed on its variegated foliage. The leaves come in combinations of green, red, yellow, and cream that look genuinely stunning in a container photograph on a garden center label. It fills a specific niche that a lot of gardeners are desperate to fill: deep shade with wet soil. That combination kills most plants. Chameleon plant thrives in it, and that right there is why it has been sold so enthusiastically for so long. Here is what the label leaves out. This plant spreads through underground rhizomes that are extraordinarily fragile and extraordinarily aggressive simultaneously. When you try to pull it by hand, and you will try to pull it by hand, those white rhizomes snap into dozens of tiny pieces and stay in the soil. Each one of those fragments is capable of regenerating into a completely new plant. Pulling chameleon plant does not remove it. Pulling chameleon plant multiplies it. You are doing the plant's propagation work for it every time you garden in the area. I planted this in a shaded bed alongside my house because nothing else would grow there. Within 1 season, it had spread beyond the bed. Within 2 seasons, it was in the lawn on 2 sides of the bed and growing under the house's foundation plantings. The smell when you disturb it is distinctive. It has a sharp fish-like odor, which is where fish mint comes from, and it is one of those smells that will permanently remind you of a gardening mistake. Removing it requires excavating the top 4 to 6 in of soil across the entire affected area, replacing the soil and monitoring for reemergence over multiple seasons from any missed fragments. In wet shaded areas in USDA zones 5 through 11, this plant has no natural self-limiting mechanism. It will continue spreading until something physically stops it. The native alternative for deep shade and moisture is wild ginger, Asarum canadense in the east, Asarum caudatum in the west. Beautiful, low-growing, well-behaved ground cover that stays where you put it and supports native insects in a way that Hutuinia never will. Let me ask you to stop for a moment and do a real accounting in your head. Think back over the last 3 springs. How much money have you spent at the garden center replacing things that died? How much have you spent on herbicides, trying to kill something that ran wild? How many hours have you put into digging out plants that turned into a problem? For a lot of gardeners watching this right now, that number is in the hundreds of dollars over 3 years. Some of you, it is north of 1,000, and almost none of that money had to be spent the way it was. The information you are watching right now for free would have saved most of that. This channel is here every single week. No subscription fees, no sponsored plant recommendations, no products I want you to buy. All I am asking is that you hit the free subscribe button so you do not miss the next video. If you have got a friend or a family member who gardens and you know they have made some of these same mistakes, send them this video right now while you are watching. The link is right there. One share could save them a summer of frustration, and a couple hundred they did not have to spend. Hit subscribe, share if you can, and let's keep going. Orange daylily, Hemerocallis fulva. I want to be careful how I say this because I know some of you have fond memories attached to this plant. The orange daylily, Hemerocallis fulva, is one of those plants that has been handed down through generations. You have seen it along roadsides. Your grandmother might have grown it. It has an old-fashioned, cheerful look that feels genuinely American in a way that is hard to argue with. But I want to make a distinction that nobody at the garden center is going to make for you. There is a fundamental difference between the classic orange daylily, the one that spreads aggressively by underground rhizomes, and the modern clumping daylily cultivars that stay put. That difference matters enormously for how your garden behaves over time. Hemerocallis fulva is not a clumping plant. It is a rhizomatous spreader, and in good soil it spreads without reservation. The underground root mat it develops over time becomes so dense that it physically prevents native seeds from germinating. Ecologists have a word for what this creates: a biological desert. The orange daylily does not just crowd other plants out. It creates soil conditions under its root mat that make it extremely difficult for anything else to establish. Native wildflower seeds that land in that zone simply do not have the gap in the soil they need to germinate and compete. By year 4 or 5 in a good location, a single original planting can become a mat several feet in diameter, and hand-pulling is largely ineffective because the tuberous roots go deep and break off during removal. You think you pulled it? You did not pull it. The fix is simple, and it does not require giving up daylilies. Modern clumping daylily cultivars. I specifically recommend Stella d'Oro, USDA zones 3 to 9, Happy Returns, zones 3 to 9, and Rosy Returns, zones 3 to 9, are all beautiful, long-blooming, repeat-flowering plants that form tidy clumps and stay exactly where you plant them. Buy those. Enjoy them. They are genuinely excellent plants. Just stop planting the orange roadside variety and calling it a garden plant. Before we get to the last 2 plants on this list, I need to give you something you can use immediately. Because if you are watching this and you recognize that you already have 1 or more of these plants in your yard, you need a real removal strategy, not just the warning. First thing I want you to understand: timing matters enormously when you are trying to remove an invasive perennial. The best time to cut back or treat most of these plants is in late summer or early fall, right after they have finished their peak growth for the season, and the plant is actively pulling energy down into its root system. When you cut a plant at that point and follow up with any treatment, the plant's own movement of resources downward works in your favor. For rhizomatous spreaders like mint, chameleon plant, and orange daylily, the single most effective non-chemical approach is what I call the smother method. Cut all top growth as close to the ground as possible. Then cover the entire affected area with overlapping layers of heavy cardboard. And I mean real cardboard, the kind from appliance boxes, at least 2 layers thick. Overlap the edges by 6 to 8 in so there are no gaps. Wet it down thoroughly. Then cover the entire area with 6 to 8 inches of wood chip mulch. Not bark nuggets, not decorative rock. Wood chips from a tree service, the kind that break down over time and create an oxygen-depleted zone underneath. Leave that installation in place for a full 12 months without disturbing it. No peeking, no shortcuts. 12 full months. When you pull the cardboard after that period, you will have eliminated the vast majority of the root system through light deprivation and compression. You will still need to patrol for regrowth, but you will have broken the plant's momentum. For woody structural invasives like wisteria and trumpet vine, there is no shortcut. Cut the main stems at ground level in late summer. Then immediately apply a concentrated cut stump treatment to the fresh cut surface before it can seal over. You have a window of about 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Do not let it dry. Treat it immediately. Then watch for root sprouts diligently all season long and cut those at ground level as soon as they appear. Root sprouts that are allowed to leaf out are feeding the root system and prolonging the war. Every sprout you cut forces the plant to exhaust stored energy. Eventually, the root system runs out of reserves. It takes patience, but it works. For running bamboo and any plant with truly deep aggressive root systems, the most effective long-term strategy is physical root barrier installation before planting. And if you are past that point, a combination of aggressive cutting and smothering over multiple seasons. Professional excavation is sometimes the only genuinely efficient answer. And I want you to know that is okay. Paying $500 once to eliminate a problem that has cost you years of frustration is almost always worth it. The biggest mistake gardeners make in removing invasive plants is inconsistency. They go hard for 2 weeks, get tired, see less growth, and assume the battle is over. Then they stop watching. Then the plant recovers. You have to be relentless, and you have to stay on it through an entire growing season minimum. Set a reminder on your phone if you have to go check on it. Cut every sprout every time. Do not give it a single season to recover. That is how you win. English ivy, Hedera helix. I said I was going to give you the most egregious examples of plants that are sold as solutions and function as problems. English ivy might be the most perfect example of that dynamic I have ever encountered in 25 years of gardening. English ivy, Hedera helix, is sold as a ground cover for difficult areas, steep slopes, deep shade under trees, dry areas where grass will not grow. And I understand the appeal completely, because it genuinely does cover those areas fast. What happens after it covers those areas is where the conversation gets serious. English ivy operates in 2 distinct destructive phases, and most gardeners only understand the first one. In its juvenile phase, the ground-creeping phase that everyone is familiar with, it forms a dense mat that blocks light from reaching the soil. That light blockage prevents the germination of native tree seedlings and forest understory plants. In a woodland setting, this eliminates the next generation of native trees. The forest floor underneath a dense ivy mat becomes biologically silent over time. No seedlings, no native wildflowers, no ground-level habitat for insects or birds, just ivy. But the second phase is what makes English ivy categorically different from a nuisance plant. Once it reaches a vertical surface, a tree trunk, a fence post, a brick wall, it transitions into its adult form. And in the adult form, it produces berries. Those berries are dispersed by birds. Those birds fly to nearby woodlands and forests. The ivy seeds germinate and begin the cycle in wild spaces far beyond your yard. English ivy does not just damage your property. It exports its damage into the surrounding ecosystem through bird dispersal. And there is nothing you can do to stop that once the plant is mature and producing berries on a nearby tree. On the structural side, English ivy on a tree is not harmless decoration. As the vine thickens over years, it adds enormous weight to the tree's canopy. That weight increases wind resistance and ice loading in winter storms, which dramatically increases the risk of branch failure. It also creates a microclimate of moisture and darkness around the trunk that can harbor wood-boring insects and fungal pathogens. Arborists have a phrase for a tree that has been heavily colonized by ivy. Ivy strangled. I have seen healthy mature trees die from it over a span of 10 to 15 years. The alternative for a shaded, difficult slope. Native Pachysandra procumbens in the east. Creeping phlox stolonifera, for banks with a bit of light, or wild ginger in deep shade. These are plants that evolved in North American ecosystems, support native insects, and do not destroy the ecology around them. Hardy across USDA zones 4 through 8, depending on species. They are available, they are beautiful, and they will not become a regional invasive problem. Make the switch. I want to pause right here and ask you to do something for someone you care about. Think of one person in your life who gardens. A neighbor, a family member, a friend, someone you know who heads to the garden center every spring and comes back with things that end up being more trouble than they are worth. Someone who has probably already planted one or two of the things I have talked about today without knowing what they were getting into. Send them this video right now. Seriously, pause this, copy the link, and send it to them. One text, one email, one share on Facebook. The information in this video can save them multiple seasons of frustration and hundreds of dollars they do not have to spend. That is not an exaggeration. You know how much it would have meant to you if someone had sent you this content before you made some of these same decisions. Pay that forward. Send it to them now, and then come right back. Because we have got the final plant on this list, and it is the one that generates professional removal bills in the thousands of dollars. Running bamboo, Philostachys sp. I have saved this one for last because it is the plant that generates the most extreme stories, the most expensive professional removal bills, and the most genuine regret from experienced gardeners across the country. And when I say running bamboo, I am specifically talking about the genus Philostachys, which includes the most commonly sold species at American garden centers. Philostachys aurea, golden bamboo, Philostachys aureosulcata, yellow groove bamboo, and Philostachys nigra, black bamboo. All of them, every single one, is a running variety. And running is exactly the right word. Let me tell you what running bamboo does specifically and literally, because I want you to understand the mechanism before I tell you the cost. Running bamboo spreads through horizontal underground rhizomes called pachymorphs. These rhizomes can travel several meters in a single growing season. They do not grow straight down. They grow horizontally near the surface of the soil, anywhere from 2 in to 20 in deep, depending on the soil conditions. And they are not deterred by most obstacles. Bamboo rhizomes have been documented penetrating asphalt driveways, growing under slab foundations, cracking mortar joints in brick walls, coming up on the other side of concrete walkways, coming up in your neighbor's yard, coming up in your neighbor's yard. I have spoken to homeowners, real people, not edge cases, who planted black bamboo as a privacy screen between their yard and a neighbor's fence. Within 4 years, it was in 3 adjacent properties. Within 6 years, 2 of those property owners received legal notices from their neighbors about the encroachment. The legal liability for bamboo that crosses a property line is a real and growing area of landscape law in this country, particularly in states like Connecticut, New Jersey, Oregon, and California, where municipalities have started enacting legislation specifically targeting running bamboo planting. Removal is not a project you take on lightly or finish quickly. To remove running bamboo effectively, you have to cut every single cane to the ground to eliminate photosynthesis. Then you have to monitor the area and cut every single new shoot that emerges immediately before it leaves out for an entire growing season, sometimes two. Every shoot you allow to leaf out is feeding the underground rhizome system and extending the time frame for removal. Professional excavation of an established bamboo grove, which means physically digging out the rhizome network, costs between $2,500 and $5,000 for a moderate-sized planting, and it is still not a guarantee of complete eradication without follow-up monitoring. If you want a tall, fast-growing privacy screen, and that is what drove you toward bamboo in the first place, I want to give you a real solution. Clumping bamboo, Fargesia species, is a completely different growth form. Fargesia rufa clumping bamboo, and Fargesia nitida, fountain bamboo, are both genuinely non-invasive. They grow in tidy expanding clumps that stay where you plant them. They are cold hardy into USDA Zone 5. They reach 6 to 10 ft tall depending on the species. They provide real visual privacy, and they will never send a rhizome under your neighbor's driveway or into your foundation. For taller screens with quick establishment, native arbor vitae, Thuya occidentalis emerald green, in zones 3 to 7, or native inkberry, Ilex glabra, in zones 4 to 9, for a broader wildlife-friendly option, are both excellent alternatives. You get the screening, you get the permanence, and you keep your property and your relationships with your neighbors intact. Now, let me make one final calculation for you before we close out today. A single professional bamboo removal job, say a 12 ft wide established grove, is going to cost you an average of $2,500 in most parts of the country. That is before any foundation repair, driveway patching, or legal costs associated with neighboring property encroachment. The rufa clumping bamboo alternative costs about $35 to $60 per plant at most reputable nurseries. 3 plants give you a beautiful contained screen that establishes within 2 seasons and never causes a single additional dollar of damage. Do that math slowly. $2,500 versus $150, plus the peace of mind. The choice is not complicated. This channel exists because American gardeners deserve honest, specific information, not just beautiful photographs and enthusiastic plant descriptions that leave out the most important facts. Not sales floors designed to make impulsive purchases feel reasonable. Not advice calibrated around what is most profitable to sell versus what is actually going to serve your yard and your wallet over the next 5 years. What I just covered with you today, 9 plants, their real mechanisms of spread, their real removal costs, and their real native alternatives, is the kind of information that should have been on the label at the garden center. It was not because that information does not help them sell more plants. I am not running a garden center. I have nothing to sell you. This channel is here because gardeners in their 50s, 60s, and beyond have spent too many seasons being given enthusiastic advice that omits the most critical details, and they deserve better than that. Let me ask you one more thing before you go. In the comments below, I want to know 2 things from you. First, what state are you gardening in? Drop it right now. I use that information to make sure what I put out every week actually matches the climate conditions where you live. Second, which plant on this list surprised you the most? Or, and this one might be more valuable to other viewers reading these comments, which one do you regret planting? Your experience in the comments is not just feedback for me, it is a warning to the next person who finds this video and scrolls down looking for real-world information from people who have actually dealt with these plants. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Free, permanent, weekly, no nonsense, no products, no sponsored content. Just what works and what does not. Delivered straight. If these gardening hard truths have changed the way you look at your backyard landscape, please subscribe and like this channel. We are unearthing the horticultural secrets that big box stores would rather keep buried. Let's cultivate a smarter garden together. Our next deep dive into the roots of your garden will be opening soon.